Raccoon City sounds lovely.
Hey everybody! Remember back in May when I said I was going to start doing reviews of movies and video games? Well, apparently, that only applies to Resident Evil media. Now, of course, I was excited for the new Resident Evil movie, but I tried to keep my expectations reasonably low. A lot of people were bitching about this film on Twitter since the first images were released, and for good reason. However, I didn't want to immediately write this movie off, so I had to keep reminding myself that this is just an adaptation of the series that I love, so of course they're gonna do some things differently. And if I sat in the theater and nitpicked everything that was different from the games, I would go fucking crazy. And after seeing the film, I can't really say that this is a bad film, but it's not really a good one either. Starting with what I liked, I think that the main thing I appreciated was how faithful they were to the survival horror genre that Resident Evil is known for. A lot of scenes had that suspenseful tension of uncertainty, and while there were a few jump scares, I felt it was used in the right way, especially for a Resident Evil film. One of the things I love and hate about the games is when a zombie comes around the corner and gets a cheap shot on you, both in third person and fixed camera. And there were plenty of examples in this film where they took from those moments in the game. There's also a bunch of really cool action scenes that are set in motion with this kind of tension and then just cut loose. One scene in the mansion in particular comes to mind where they make clever use of muzzle flashes to light the room. I also liked the interactions with all of the characters, especially when they were setting up in the first act, and I think this is when the movie is showing its good side. The first act with setup, and the second act where we're switching back and forth between the two scenarios. This film is also an Easter egg extravaganza, especially in these first two acts. There's plenty of moments where you'll look at something on screen and go,
I understood that reference.
And it is admittedly very cute, and I can't be mad at that. Now going on to the bad stuff. I think this film has two major problems with it. It's trying to cram the plot of two games into one movie, and the writing is god-awful. Let's start with the plot. As I'm sure most of you already know, this adaptation takes the main plots of Resident Evil 1 and 2 and puts them together. Personally, I think that makes sense, since it splits up our main cast into A and B plots, and they end up coming together in the final act. However, I do think that the third act, when they come together, hits you like a truck, and it basically speeds through what would be the final boss of the film. I do also wish they spent more time exploring the Spencer Mansion and RPD, and I feel like if the film was a bit longer, they would have been able to. Because once the familiar plot lines start to come in, they hit what would basically be the first hour of each of the games before they have to move on to the end game. This also doesn't make for a lot of time to actually develop these characters either, and I feel like someone coming in fresh won't have any idea who these characters are supposed to be. And like I mentioned before, the writing for the main cast is fucking terrible. It just feels lazy. And this might sound like a nitpick, but I was getting really annoyed that the word fuck was used so frequently. And I don't mean that it was said every once in a while, but every other sentence had the word fuck somewhere in there. It almost seems like the actors were given a little too much freedom with their ad-libbing. Like the director told them, okay Leon, it's your first time seeing a zombie getting shot in the head, and action. And Beck from Victorious went, oh fuck, oh fuck, that's oh man, oh fuck, that's a zombie, oh fuck. Which is fine for one character to say, like the trucker in the intro when he hits the zombie. But every fucking character talks like this. And I wasn't expecting an Oscar-nominated performance or anything, but I just wish the dialogue was a bit more clever. And this is where my Resident Evil bias is going to come in, but I feel like it does some of these legacy characters a disservice with the way these characters are written. Most notably with Leon S. Kennedy. I don't give a shit that he doesn't look like the Leon we know from the games, but what I do give a shit about is that he does not act like Leon at all. Instead of the rookie cop who has to do what he can to survive and get the job done for the night, is instead a complete idiot who only survives because other characters are doing the heavy lifting to save his ass. And I've stated before that Leon is a dumbass, but this isn't what I meant. Leon from the games is a bit naive sometimes, but he's not dumb. This Leon is incompetent, and it's so hard to watch. He's the butt of everyone else's joke, and it's really unfortunate because, as I'm sure you're aware, Leon is my favorite character. And every character has something off with their in-game counterparts, and I think the one who's the most quote-unquote accurate is Robbie Amell as Chris Redfield. Chief Irons was actually pretty funny and had some good moments, but he's more of a protagonist here as opposed to the antagonist in the games. Birkin is barely in the movie, and I feel like there's no real build-up to the final confrontation with him. Wesker is definitely overused in an obnoxious way, and he's not really threatening at all. He just sort of looks and feels like a high school jock hanging out with his frat boys. I vaguely remember Jill Valentine being in the film, and Lisa Trevor was just so out of place. And even with all this in mind, I still can't say that I really hated the film overall. I think the last act and the mid-credits scene soured it as a whole for me. You know how bad movies can be saved with a good ending? Well, it's the opposite here. And yes, you heard correct. There is a mid-credit scene that tries to set up a sequel, and it does not read the room at all. I hate to sound overdramatic, but this was my exact expression when the mid-credit scene ended. Overall, this movie is very mixed for me. Like I just said, I can't say that I hated it overall, but there were just a lot of things that really bugged me. I would say that if you want to watch it yourself, go right ahead, just to get a Cliff Notes RE1 and RE2 that's just worse. But the best way to experience this story is to just play Resident Evil. And with all that being said, I'm going to give Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City, and at least it's better than the Mila Jovovich movies, out of 10.